Hey, boys and girls, it's good to see you another Sunday. It's wonderful to be able to tell you another story of the boy with the bow. You'll remember last time we told our story, Vivian, along with her dad, the king, had just seen the boy with the bow. He was all safe and he looked healthy, but he was sleeping. And Sir Liechtenstein had run off. He had lost the competition. And had started a whole, almost an entire war, right? They had been fighting and battling against the kingdom, the kingdom, and we will begin our story of the boy with the bow at this point. So Vivian has walked away, let the boy with the bow sleep, and he's actually been sleeping for almost 3 days. And this is where we start off our story of the boy with the bow. The boy with the bow heard the crisp morning air push against the curtains and a bird chirping through a window. He felt so comfortable and sleepy. Maybe this is what it felt like to sleep in a real bed. And then he realized he was sleeping in a real bed. He stretched and, not really realizing that he wasn't in his treehouse, got ready to get up. But then suddenly he heard a voice say, "He's awake." It was an unfamiliar voice. Maybe he'd been captured by Sir Liechtenstein. And in a split second, thousands of thoughts raced through the boy with the bow. Said, maybe he'd been captured. What was he supposed to do? He looked and he saw his bow and his arrows. And he got up out of bed to race towards them to defend himself. When suddenly he heard the doctor say, "Now settle down. Settle down, boy with the bow. I'm the doctor. I'm a doctor. I'm just here to check up on you and make sure you're okay. I'm glad to see that you're awake." The boy with the bow took a deep breath. Whew. He was safe. "How long have I been sleeping?" he asked. And the doctor said, 3 days. 3 days. That was a lot of days for the boy with the bow to be sleeping. He had a lot to do. He had to take care of his treehouse. He had to start hunting and fishing so he could be ready for the winter. The boy with the bow walked more calmly this time toward his bow and arrows and said, "Doctor, thanks so much for taking care of me, but I've got to be off. My treehouse needs some fixing. I need to start getting ready for the winter. Give my best to the king, to Vivian, but I've got to go." "Oh, you can't go yet," said the doctor. You've got to say at least goodbye and see the king. Actually, the king told me that he wants to see you very soon. He's in the kitchen. Why don't I take you there?" So the boy with the bow said, "Okay, yeah, sure, you can do that." And the doctor took the boy with the bow to a small, simple kitchen where 3 maids were cooking breakfast. On the other end of the kitchen, the king and Vivian sat over a basin of water, washing dirty dishes and pots and pans. As the boy with the bow walked into the kitchen, Vivian looked up and squealed in delight. "You're awake! It's so good to see you!" As she stood up from her chair and ran to hug the boy with the bow, the king introduced himself. After Vivian had hugged him and was talking to him, the king introduced himself to the boy with the bow and invited the boy to join Vivian and him in scrubbing dishes. "Well, I've never had dishes to scrub, but I'll give it a try," replied the boy with the bow. "It's really easy," explained the king. "Just roll up your sleeves, good. Take a rag and grab a dish or pan from the tub and just scrub it clean. It's as simple as that. Look at you, you're doing a great job. You're going to be a professional dishwasher," he said. The boy with the bow thought it was an odd thing for a king to be washing dishes. He had just realized that. And finally, after they'd been washing a few dishes, he worked up the courage and asked, "Is this something that all kings do?" "Oh, no, not all kings," said the king. "But good kings do things like this, things that remind them that they're human." "I like that. That seems like a wise thing," thought the boy with the bow. And Vivian gave voice to his thoughts and she said, "I like that a lot." And they both smiled, and the king smiled, and they went back to washing dishes. As they were washing dishes, though, the king said, "Listen, boy with the bow, I've asked the doctor to bring you here because I wanted to ask you something. It's very important. Sir Liechtenstein is still on the loose, as you know, with a lot of his bad guys, the men in black cloaks. And I have a spy on the inside that he's hatched a plan to try to catch Sir Liechtenstein. Now, my spy doesn't know where Sir Liechtenstein is, but he thinks that Sir Liechtenstein would want to capture you and Vivian. And it'd have to be both of you because he wouldn't risk it for just one. So what I want both of you to do is I want you to go out into the woods and I want you to pretend like nothing's wrong, but I want you, boy with the bow, to get captured. So that when you're captured, we can follow you to Sir Liechtenstein's lair and we can put an end to Sir Liechtenstein once and for all. Well, what's going to happen to Vivian? The boy with the bow asked. Well, we'll need to make sure that Vivian is able to run away, and I'll be following you on my very quiet horse. And as Vivian runs, I will grab Vivian and I will bring her away so that she doesn't have to get captured. Only one of you has to. And if anyone is to get captured, I believe it should be you. The boy with the bow agreed and said, yeah, that seems very wise. I think that would be best. But he asked, can I grab my bow and arrows? I think it'd be good for me to have those. The king said, you have 2 hours. Get them ready and hurry. 2 hours later, the boy with the bow and Vivian were standing at the gate of the castle, waiting for it to open so they could venture out into the woods. They both looked nervous, but they had a plan. The gate opened, and the boy with the bow and Vivian stepped out of the castle and into the woods, trying to get captured. As they walked toward the treehouse, everything was silent, and the boy with the bow pulled out his bow just so that he could have it. Everything was silent. The birds are hiding, observed the boy with the bow. From us? Asked Vivian. No, from someone else, I think. Maybe from our spy or from the king who's following us? Maybe, said the boy with the bow, but I feel like it might be someone else. They walked together through the woods, flinching at every snap twig and every rustled bush, but nobody attacked them, not yet. They were deep into the woods now, and not too far from the treehouse. Just then, a yell came from high above in the trees. The boy with the bow looked up, and he saw black cloaks jumping from limb to limb. Run, he said. Run, Vivian. Vivian and the boy ran with all of their might, twisting through the trees, plowing through the needly bushes. Vivian drew a dagger that she had, and the boy with the bow thought, oh, that's a good thing that she has another weapon. The boy with the bow took out his bow, and they kept running. Then all of a sudden he heard Vivian scream. He turned to see a hand dragging her to the forest floor by her clothes. And then he saw her twist toward the man in a black cloak and take her small dagger and slice towards the man's face. He screamed, ow, 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 and let go of Vivian, and she ran faster than the boy with the bow had ever seen anyone run. The boy with the bow saw another man running after Vivian, and he took his arrow, put it in his bow, and let it fly. It flew and hit the other man in a black cloak. Vivian was free. He saw Vivian jump onto the horse with the king and ride off. And now it was all he could do was be captured. He knelt down onto the ground, put his hand behind his head, and he put his bow down on the ground, put his hands behind his head, and let himself be captured. 10 men in black cloaks surrounded him and tied his hands behind his back. They tied him to a horse and carted him off to the cave. The boy with the bow was hoping that the army was following him quietly. They got to a cave, and there was a fire inside the cave. Out stepped Sir Liechtenstein with a knife. His eyes were wild, and he was livid. Set him on the table, boys. It's time for revenge, he said. The boy with the bow had to stall. What's the knife for? Sir Liechtenstein chuckled for a bit of kind of a long time. It was almost a minute. And then he said, it's for your throat, you silly boy. And he made this sign. The boy with the bow didn't see any of the army, and he had tried to stall a little bit longer, but he couldn't. Sir Liechtenstein had his men put him on a table, and just then Sir Liechtenstein raised his hand with the knife to drive it through the boy with the bow's chest. And then, just as he was about to come down, an arrow hit his wrist, and he screamed, "Ah!" And then the boy with the bow heard the trumpet sound of the kingdom, and men raced with drawn swords to try to catch Sir Liechtenstein. Sir Liechtenstein's men were so scared that they all ran, and Sir Liechtenstein was so surprised, and his wrist was hurting so bad that he just gave up. That simply, Sir Liechtenstein had been captured. They all tied Sir Liechtenstein to a tree, just like the boy with the bow had been tied to a tree. And then they decided, you know what? Let's actually cut down the tree, and let's put Sir Liechtenstein. Let's keep him tied to the log, and let's put the log in between two horses. And you know what we should do? Let's parade the log through the town and up to the castle. And they did just that. People stopped working to follow Sir Liechtenstein, who was tied to a log and being carted along by two horses. And you know what was funny? Sometimes the log, it would fall, and Sir Liechtenstein would get little like smashed by the log. Ah, oh, ah! And he would cry out, and everyone would laugh, and then they'd take the log, they put it onto the horses, and so it would sit kind of like this, you know? It would sit like this, right? The log would sit, and then sometimes it would fall. And Sir Liechtenstein was, of course, tied to the log. They made it all the way to the castle, and they stood Sir Liechtenstein up on his log, and they sat him there for 2 hours. And suddenly he started complaining that he was hot. He was very hot. And a grandma who was very, very smart, she decided that, well, she would help Sir Liechtenstein. So she took a bucket of some of the coldest water you could possibly think, and she poured it slowly onto Sir Liechtenstein, and he was saying, it's too cold, it's too cold, it's too cold. And everyone thought that the grandma was so funny that they all got their own buckets. All 3,000 people in the town. They formed a line, and they slowly poured cold water onto Sir Liechtenstein until he was crying for mercy, crying for mercy. You know what? The townspeople had so much fun that the king declared a holiday. And he would normally execute someone like a traitor as bad as Sir Liechtenstein, but he decided to declare this a yearly holiday where they would take Sir Liechtenstein out of captivity, they tie him to a log, and they parade him through the town. Then they put him up against the castle wall, and they would take the ice-cold water when he was at his warmest, and they would pour it down his back and make him scream, "I'm so cold!" It was a great idea. The king declared the holiday, and everyone cheered. It was a perfect day, the boy with the bow thought. But there was one thing that the king had in his mind. One other reason he wanted to declare this day a holiday. The crowd was jeering at Sir Liechtenstein, and the king took out his sword, and he called everyone. He said, "Silence, please! I have one item of business I want to go through before we conclude this wonderful holiday." And he said, "Boy with the bow, please come up here and kneel before me." The boy with the bow thought, this is very strange and weird. The boy with the bow made his way through the crowd, wondering what was going to happen, and everyone started chanting, "Boy with the bow, boy with the bow." And the boy with the bow realized that he was going to be knighted. He got extremely excited. And he didn't know exactly what was going to happen, but he just knew all he had to do was just obey the king's directions. So he got up. All 3,000 people of the town were there, cheering and excited for him. And the king called for the crowd to hush. It did. He said, "This boy, townspeople, who you call Boy with a Bow, has shown extraordinary acts of bravery and of kindness. So on that account, I wish to take him under my wing as a pupil, as a knight. This boy with the bow will no longer be known by that name, the boy with the bow, but from now on, He shall be a knight in my castle, and his name shall be that name of my great-great-grandfather, Sir William. He took his sword, and he placed it on the right shoulder of the boy with the bow, and knighted him. He said, "Arise, Sir William." And the crowd cheered. The boy with the bow was happier than he'd ever been. Not only was he a knight, but he was going to be a pupil of the king. He was going to be cared for. And not only was he a knight, but he now had a name. No more of the long boy with the bow name. His name was William. And he remembered one thing that brought him even more joy. As he caught Vivian's eye, he also had a good friend in the castle, and her name was Vivian. The king put his arm around William as the crowd cheered, and the king, William, and Vivian walked through the gates, and the king smiled, looking at the boy with the bow, his arm around the boy with the bow, and he said, "William, welcome to your new home. This is home now." William, Vivian, and the king lived happily ever after. I hope you've enjoyed this story. I hope it's worth your time. I hope you've been enjoying spending time talking about it. This was more of a wrap-up, so we don't have a whole lot to talk about. But one thing I do want to talk about is how Jesus adopts us into his family. When we believe in him and trust in him, the Bible tells us that we are called sons of God, that we are his sons. And the Bible also tells us that we can cry to him, "Father, help, Abba, Father." Those are amazing things, that we have a Father who is perfect, who is God, who is powerful. And if we trust in Jesus, he is our Father as well. The boy with the bow found a father figure in the king. And that was something that was very important for him. That was something that was missing for him. And that's something that brought a lot of joy to him. And we have a dad in God who will never leave us, who will always be perfect. I hope you've enjoyed these times. I've really enjoyed telling you these stories. I want to say thank you to people who have helped behind the scenes so much, especially to Megan Wanchura for her editing these videos. She's done an awesome job. She's made my job so much easier. And then to Julie Rohr, who has made these wonderful pictures that you've gotten to look at. They both have done an awesome job. They've been absolutely essential for these videos, and so I'm very thankful for them. Thanks for listening to this story. Thanks to all that have helped. And I hope to be able to talk to you about Boy with a Bow stories when we see you in person these next couple of weeks. Have a good Sunday.